So I'm going to talk a little bit about just what brings me to the work. Maybe a little bit later I'll talk a bit about process, and then I'll answer some questions specifically about that process. So I'll start with a quote by one of my favorite guys, Niels Bohr. Everybody knows, not all applaud at one time. He said, "Everything we call real is made of things that cannot be regarded as real. Our perception of reality," and that's end quote, "our perception of reality is shaped by limitations in how we observe and how we measure it." Like superposition, anyone, you know? Later for this. Pretty much now you know everything about me, so thanks. What brings us here to experience art in the context of nature? Is it our innate human search for meaning or a desperate need to understand? Is that why we're here? Is there a purpose to art, to making art? The definitive answer to that question is maybe.
Do you mind leaning into the microphone a little more because the people in the back can't?
I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
You're forgiven. So the purpose of art is probably the same as the purpose of life. Fact is, we don't really know what that purpose is, but maybe the purpose is to discover the purpose. Very much an Arabaro. The poet Celine, he said, more or less, art is just a shout out to the universe that we're here, that we exist. Like handprints on a cave wall in Chauvet 40,000 years ago. 40,000 years ago, some kid put his handprints on the wall to say, I was here. I suspect that the purpose of our lives is really to discover that purpose. Again, an Arabaro, something that is a symbol we find in every culture, every religion. We find it in math, we find it in faith, culture, design. So it's a very common theme. But maybe we're just flesh machines serving replications designed by our DNA. So our true purpose will always elude us. I mean, we could take refuge in art and faith, politics, family. We could try and wrap ourselves in certainty, but there's always that growing sense of doubt. So as much as I love science, and I do love science, I really love doubt. Because doubt provokes curiosity, it begets science, though the Greeks would call it philosophy. We focus on science as a way to understand in a provable way, in an absolutist way, the way the world works, the way the universe expands. And with each new discovery, we get more questions, more of the unknown. More dimensions, quantum entanglement, multiple universes, please make it stop. Even our greatest telescope can see all the way to the back of, it sees all the way back to the beginning of time. But the question does remain, what happened before that? What came before? So along the way, stumble as we may, whether by epiphany of spirit or mathematical deduction, there is a moment that stops us in our tracks. And that we sometimes hold on for an instant, and sometimes for a moment longer, and try as we want to hold on to it. We cannot, it's gone. And that is our encounter with awe. Awe. Now, there are many approaches to making and experiencing what we define as art. There's math art, which is, based on the language of the absolute to create a visual cohesion. There's religious art that confirms or helps us take comfort in faith, no matter what the faith. Art brut, outsider art, expression that exists really beyond cultural references, and propaganda art, art that insists we do something or buy something. Conceptual art, which is the exercise of mind, logical, emotional, or sensory. But for me, my experience with art, both ancient or modern, technical or instinctual, as it is with nature itself, both macro and micro, always circles back to the moment that stops me in my track. It's a moment of awe. Since we will talk about machines, I asked ChatGPT to explain awe to me. This is what she said. Awe is a pure visceral encounter with the sublime. It is a state of being utterly present, where time seems to pause and the boundaries of self momentarily dissolve. The body might react before thought, a sharp intake of breath, a shiver, an expansion in the chest, or even a feeling of weightlessness, end quote. So that's awe in its rawest form. Now, machine wrote that. This is awe in its rawest form, a confrontation with something so vast and profound or intensely beautiful that it surpasses immediate comprehension. It's an openness, a suspension of the known, where you are simply with the work of art, unmediated by intellect or interpretation. It's that fleeting moment before meaning rushes in, where you are not just seeing, but experiencing at the deepest level. So that's what drives me, both in making or experiencing. But what can a machine know of awe? Maybe more than we can give it credit, because we train it, it digests, it scrapes, it reads, it analyzes, and with a nudge, it seems to understand. So I say that all art is connected to science, and all science is connected to art. Both seek understanding, reflection, analysis, feeling, humanizing. They both seek the truth. They seek awe. So what inspired me to do this work, to tell this story? Science, yeah. Curiosity, yeah. And the exploration of how memory, recollection, history reveals something close to the truth. So devices that were invented by Robert Hooke and Antoine Leeuwenhoek, and of course Lippershey, these are Flemish brilliant scientists. They invented the microscope and its cousin, the telescope, and those devices gave us a look at the universe, in some cases a cell, in other cases a planet, and the impact of these instruments extended way beyond science. They influenced culture, artistic movements, and education, of course. The science of oil and color, replacing fast-drying egg tempera, used at the time of the early Flemish painters, that paint dries slower, and that allowed them to refine the painting. So these experiments with paint continued capturing, in no small part, what was lying around these artisan studios, what we call still life, right? And what we now see or label as still life. So decay, beauty, light, relationships of form, representations of reality. Now the work I make is not real, whether you think so or not, it's not. It's a fiction, and it's a fiction that feels real. It's a fiction that recalls the way we used to capture photographically or with paint. So we culturally regard, up to recently, that the photograph is true, that it reveals truth. Even the most abstract black and white street moment, we believe it happened. Culturally, it has been so, and now it changes. Doubt has woven itself into the fabric of photography, of photographic truth. No matter if it feels true, if it feels real, I guess it is. That's our cultural moment for certain. Not to go too far down that rabbit hole, I can briefly imply that reality, it's often constructed by the stories we tell ourselves, right? The stories our culture tells us, stories that change or are rewritten with age or history, memory. Truth now, more fungible, relative, and subjective. This is as much cultural and political as it is interpersonal. No longer is there a common touchstone of absolute truth, but has there ever really been one? So over the last decade, I've explored fictions that feel real but are not. And with my past work, I've taken and manipulated photographs, which we assume have been real. I've manipulated them so they feel slightly unreal. I've explored this uncanny valley. And are we comfortable in this uncanny valley, or do we want to escape it? The DNA of the uncanny valley is, of course, doubt, and is revealed by very subtle flaws. By looking closely, the flaws can reveal hidden meanings and mysterious reflections. So my visual work exists in that gray zone between the artifice, traditional photography. Our creative tools, they continue to evolve, whether it's automatic cameras or robot sculpting or 3D printing, augmented reality. They've enabled artists to push the conversation about creative purity into another murky zone. Where do the tools begin and the artist's intentions end? Now, these works are made in a relationship with a machine, not a brush or a chisel, not a camera, but a new kind of machine, a part miracle, part math, part horror. But by shaping the input and output using traditional photographic sensibilities and techniques, I use this artificial intelligence, such as it is, or augmented realities, to expand my visual thinking. As I adjust, I rephrase, I add modifications, I add specifics, I remove things, and I tailor the output until it feels right. Prompts, poetics, descriptives, technical modifiers, formatting, all contribute to the end result, which are then adjusted and shifted and changed and then filtered through additional software. The work continues my exploration of art, science, and technology to better understand the blurring of truth and fiction. Thanks.